The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today for a framework for a successful SEO strategy, the 2014 edition. This is one of my most popular presentations. Actually, this is my #1 most popular presentation, and it has been updated for the latest and greatest in SEO for this year. So we're going to go over a lot today. I think that this presentation is pretty popular because it has a little bit of something for everyone. There's the real basic 101 level, how does SEO work type of stuff, and then there's, more advanced how to actually set up and implement an SEO strategy and how to measure the results of it and the latest trends in SEO. So it covers a lot. But if there's anything that, it was too far over your head and you want me to go back on, or need to do the reverse, you want to dive in a little deeper to a particular thing, certainly submit questions along the way. We'll cover most of them at the end, but submit them as you think of them so that I can make sure to give you all the information that you wanted to get today. And I think I just had an issue with my screen. Nope, we're back. Okay. So, agenda for today, like I said, this presentation goes over, and before I forget, at the end I have a pretty good deal for all of you webinar attendees. So even if you can't stay on live to the end, I'll be sending out the link to the recording afterwards. You can fast forward to the end and check out what the special deal for webinar attendees is. So back to the agenda. We are going to go over SEO 101, my threefold approach to SEO, which is basically how to set and implement the strategy. Measurement improvement, how to continuously improve on the strategy that you set and measure the effectiveness of it. And like I said, what's new, the trends in SEO. I have to turn my screen off for just a moment here because I can't see the webinar panel. Okay. I'll put that back on. All right, sorry about that. That's better. Okay, so like I said, submit questions along the way, and I actually have Roxanne here with me who's going to be combing through them and reading them to me at the end. So, and I might take one here or there along the way too. So certainly just submit them as you think about them. In the questions section, please, there is a chat section too, which is different and a little harder for us to organize. So if you can put them into the questions section, that would be ideal. So a little bit about me for those of you who are not yet familiar with me. I am a complete and total nerd. Born and raised a geek is what I usually say. My dad was a TV repairman, so he had his own TV repair business, and he was always bringing home the latest gadgets, the latest technology, which at the time was like Beta VCRs and my favorite, Commodore 64 computers. So, as early as 1986, as a little kid, I was coding on a Commodore 64 computer for fun. And of course, when the internet came into the house, I started coding websites in HTML just for fun. And that, not directly, but did lead into a career in e-commerce, where I was e-commerce manager for 2 different companies before going out on my own. And also in between those 2 positions as e-commerce manager, I got my MBA in marketing, where they taught me absolutely nothing about digital marketing. But I did learn the importance of and how to write a strategic and measurable marketing plan, which I think really differentiates me today now that I have my own business, because I'm very strategic about the way that I approach SEO. And I think that obviously makes it more effective, and setting up measurable strategies allows you to do more of what works and less of what doesn't, and like I said, have more success overall. So that's me. And like it says on the bottom, if you want these slides, if you want to download them instead of feverishly taking notes, there's a link right there. You can go and download them. I'll also email them out to everyone afterwards. So, SEO 101. To start with the basics, for those who aren't familiar how search engines work exactly, search engines index your website. So basically, Google does data entry with your website, similar to the way that if you had a old-fashioned phone number address book where you hand-wrote all your names and addresses and phone numbers of your friends and family in the book, and then you wanted to type it into some system on the computer. That's kind of what Google does. It takes the information from your website, and it doesn't really matter how pretty or graphical your website is, it just takes the data, the code and the text out of your website and inserts it into its own database, which is really just like a giant Excel spreadsheet. So what that looks like is, here's a slide that shows my website, all pretty and colorful on the front end to humans, but on the back end, on the right side there, is what it looks like to a search engine. And it just pulls all the information in from each page and categorizes it accordingly. So that when a user, such as Mark Simpson in this slide here, goes and searches into Google, something in Google, it searches against that database and returns the result very quickly. It would be very time inefficient for Google to go out and check every single website at the moment that someone types something into Google, so that's why they do that. And that segues into the first of 3 categories of my SEO strategy planning, which is technical. So the first aspect of SEO is technical. It's taking that, it's that indexing behavior. The little SEO robot program comes along, crawls your website, takes a copy of it, extracts all the text and code, and indexes it in the database. So the planning aspect of the technical part of SEO is the goal is not to confuse the Googlebot. So Mr. Googlebot there I have looking very confused. It's a robot, it's a program, it's an automated computer program. So it can get tripped up very easily if your code is not clean. So similar to that analogy where I was saying, if you have an address book with handwritten names and phone numbers, and the handwriting is messy, you or whoever is typing it into the database or the computer program, it might make mistakes or might not be able to insert it at all because it's unable to be read. So if the code on your website is not clean and up to best practices as far as what search engines need, then Mr. Googlebot can get confused and either categorize your information incorrectly or not be able to extract it at all. So what do you do about that? There's tools out there. The one that I like the best is WooRank, and you can run your website in WooRank, and it will tell you, the technical aspects of it that need work and which ones are okay. It'll kind of give you even a color-coded red, white, and blue, red, yellow, and green color-coded way of just looking at it and seeing, where things need help. And some of that might be over your head because it is technical things that it is checking about your website code. So what do you do with that report? Well, you can print it and hand it to your webmaster, your web developer, and cry at the cost of them fixing it all. But it's typically just kind of a one-time thing, not truly one-time. I mean, you should check it every once in a while, every quarter, or a couple times a year, but it's not a super ongoing thing that you need to be checking all the time. Once your code is cleaned up, you're pretty much good to go. And if you're on a search engine-friendly website platform, such as WordPress, you may have a lot of it taken care of already because the foundation of WordPress is very SEO-friendly, so it may not be that bad. But go to WooRank, enter your website, and check it out. Or what I have to offer at the end has something similar as well. But the quick and easy first check could be going to WooRank and putting your website through their report. So that is it for the technical part of things. It's pretty simple, really. The second area of activity for SEO is on-page, which basically refers to the content on your website, the keywords that you choose to use, where and how you use them, and how you organize the information. So the first thing, is what keywords you use. And I'm just going to start by dispelling a myth right off the bat. Straight from the horse's mouth, I love referring to Matt Cutts at Google as the horse. It just cracks me up. But anyway, straight from the horse's mouth, Google does not use the meta keywords tag. So there's these things called meta tags on your website. They're behind-the-scenes tags that tell the search engine more information about the site than is able to be seen on the front end. And some of the meta keywords, some of the meta tags are indeed still used by the search engines, very much so. But not the one that's called meta keywords tag. That was all there really was to SEO back in the late 90s when all of this started. That was the only way to tell the search engine before they were very advanced with the crawling thing what your website was about. You would just stuff a bunch of keywords into the meta keywords tag, and that was how they categorized your site. But that got quickly overused and abused, and so Google decided to come up with more advanced ways to crawl the site and look at other things. And the meta keywords tag, they basically have been saying for several years now, is they just don't look at it anymore. So if you're talking to an SEO specialist or SEO company and they say something about filling out your meta keywords tag, you can show them the door because they don't know what they're talking about, or they're trying to pull the wool over on you. So what you do want to do with keywords is research. You want to research different ways of saying things. There's a ton of different ways of saying the same thing. So this tool from Google called the Google AdWords Keyword Planner, it used to be called just the Keyword Tool, now it's called the Keyword Planner tool. It tells you all the different ways that people search a certain thing. So you can put in one test phrase like wedding photographer, and it'll spit back all the different ways that people put that in. Photographer for weddings, wedding photography, photography for weddings, all the different variations. And most importantly, it will tell you how popular each one of those ways of saying it is. It'll actually give you data on the number of times per month that term, that phrase, is searched that way. And quick note before I tell you what to do with that data, the AdWords keyword tool, you do need to sign up for an AdWords account to get to it, but you do not need to pay for ads. In the sign-up process, they will prompt you to put in your credit card and start buying ads and running an ad campaign, but you can just X out of that and come right back. The goal is just to get yourself an AdWords login. Once you have an AdWords login, you can go in and use the Keyword Planner tool without buying ads. So what you want to do with that data that I talked about the search data, how many times per month a term is searched, is what I refer to as the Goldilocks method. You want to pick phrases that are not too hot and not too cold, but just right. They have a nice, healthy amount of search volume, but not so much so that you're not going to have a hope or a prayer of ranking for them. Only the most nationwide big brands are going to rank for the most popular ways of saying things. But you don't want, on the flip side, you don't want to try to rank for a phrase that it might be easy to rank for, but nobody is typing it in that way. You want to find the ones that people do type it in that way pretty often, just not the most popular way of saying it. So number-wise, what does that mean? If you're just starting out with your SEO efforts and you really haven't done a whole lot for SEO yet, your range that you're looking at is probably good to look at between 50 and 500 searches per month. So if a phrase is searched, 100 times a month, that's probably a good thing for you to go for versus 5,000 times per month or even bigger. You definitely wouldn't want to go for that. You would want to say it in a way that is in that mid-range, which for you would be about 50 to 500 times per month. If you have gotten some SEO mojo rolling already, you can then take that range and bump it up a bit. Maybe then you're looking at more like 1,500 to 3,000 a month or something. You can kind of, shift it up as you get more advanced with this stuff. But to start, 50 to 500 is a safe range. So what do you do with that, the keyword data? Basically, you're going to use that way of saying it on your pages. And speaking of your pages, organizing your pages is a very important part of SEO, also referred to as site structure. If you have one page that says all of your products or services, we offer this, we offer that, we offer this, we offer that, the Google bot will look at that page and kind of maybe sort of be able to figure out a theme amongst all those words, but it's not clear, it's not perfectly clear what that page is about. And it's fine to have that index page where it says these are all the things that we do. But if you make it so that each thing can be clicked into and you can be brought to a page just about that thing, like this, one page about one service, another page about the other service, and so on, that will make it perfectly clear to the search engine robot what each page is about. So, for example, if you're a photographer and you offer wedding photography, family portraits, and corporate event photography. That's fine to have that one services page that lists all of that, but you really want to also offer pages where they can click, the user and the search engine robot can click in and get to a page just about the wedding photography, and a different page just about the family portraits, and so on. And that's where you can then take that phrase that you researched and found to be a really good way to say it. If you're a wedding photographer in New Jersey, maybe you found that, NJ wedding photographer is a really good one versus NJ wedding photography. So, you might title your page that way and then pepper it in a few more times into the copy of that page. Not stuff it by any means, but, naturally written in. We have been a New Jersey wedding photographer for X amount of years, blah, blah, blah. But the important part here is the separate pages, drilled down, very specific pages about each product or about each service, and assigning one key phrase, one way of saying it to each page based upon your research, what you found to be in that good range. So that's kind of the basic content of your regular part of your website. Now, there does need to be some more content strategy for ongoing content, and there are several goals for your content strategy for your website. Number one is to expand the site size. Search engines like to see sites that are always growing. And number two, always having fresh, new information added to it. And just to dispel another common misunderstanding is the fact that people think sometimes you can take one page on your site and keep changing up the copy in order to keep it, quote unquote, fresh. And that's not really going to achieve this goal because, well, it's not going to achieve the number one goal, which is expanding the site size. It will keep it fresh technically, but it's going to just confuse the search engine robot because you're going to keep changing what that page is about, and it already had it categorized under one thing. And so that's not the way to achieve these goals. We will talk about what is the way. But so first goal, expand the site size, make it always growing bigger. Number two, keep it fresh with new information all the time. Number three is to use different keyword variations, because you can only, in your main services section where you're describing your products and services, you can only say it one way there. So, in your fresh content, your ongoing content, it's an opportunity to say it a bunch of different ways, because maybe you found that there's a bunch of different ways to say the same thing that are all in a good keyword volume range. And then the fourth goal is to obtain links and social shares, which actually refers to the whole third bucket of SEO that we will get to. But that's the 4 goals for your ongoing content. And the best way to achieve all those goals is through a blog. This is why you hear about blogging so much when it comes to SEO, because a blog easily achieves all 4 goals for content strategy for SEO. So first and foremost is to blog regularly or religiously. And just a note, the blog must be on your own website, not on WordPress.com or Blogger.com, because basically, all these keywords and these links and stuff that you're going to be building up on this content are, if they're not on your website, then they're not going to benefit your website in the search results. All that kind of search engine mojo would go to WordPress.com or Blogger.com. So it has to be on your website.com. So that being said, there's a direct correlation between the frequency of, kind of the volume of blog articles and traffic. Basically, there's the chart. Doesn't lie, it just goes up. The more articles you put out on your website, the more traffic you get. I know someone who doesn't really pay that much attention to his keywords at all, but he blogs daily as in 365 days a year, 7 days a week, and he has amazing amounts of traffic just from that volume. So, I do recommend putting a keyword strategy into it because you're probably not going to blog daily, but still, just as much as you possibly can. Weekly would be my recommendation for kind of setting your bare minimum goal, but something is better than nothing. If the thought of blogging weekly makes you want to jump off a bridge, don't worry about it too much. It's, something is better than nothing. Just set the weekly as like your ultimate goal to work up to eventually. what will help you reach that goal is to be organized with your content strategy. And I refer to a blogging schedule as an editorial calendar, but it's really just a fancy way of saying blogging schedule. But if you set it up this way that I have laid out here, which is just a simple spreadsheet with date, category, topic, key phrase, and your title with your key phrase in it, that basically allows you to achieve that third goal, which is the varied keywords, so using the keywords in a bunch of different ways based upon your research. So you can set yourself up, and the Blogging Weekly thing, if you set 4 different categories, 4 different types of things that you're going to write about, and just repeat those, copy paste right down the category column there, you therefore have a framework for your 4 posts per month. And then you can assign a specific topic to it, find a key phrase that works well with that topic, and then work that into your title. The best place for the key phrase in the title, if you can, is towards the front. So if your blog article is about wedding photography tips, then, and if that's your phrase, to put, wedding photography tips, top 10 newest ideas, or that's a bad example, but you get the idea, versus, top 10 ideas for wedding photography tips, having the phrase at the end. If you can, fit it in as close to the front as possible as this more impactful area for the search engine. But this will also help you avoid writer's block, because, and you'll find too that once you start going into the keyword research and you're looking at all these different ways of saying things, that'll actually give you blog article ideas. And before you know it, you'll be filling out this blogging schedule with all sorts of ideas, and you'll have probably 4, 6, 8 weeks or more of content ideas laid out already. And then you don't hit that writer's block thing where if you said, okay, Friday afternoons are going to be my blogging time, and you have a long week, you get to Friday afternoon, you sit down and you're like, oh, what am I going to blog about? That won't happen with this framework, and you'll get your varied keywords in there too. And just keep in mind, 1 key phrase per post, same concept as the rest of the pages on your site. If you say it too many different ways and throughout the article, then you might confuse Mr. Googlebot. You want to just be consistent in the way that you say it. Put it in the front of the title, pepper it in a couple more times, but say it the same way each time. Goal number 4 for the content is to get the links and shares, which we're going to go much more into momentarily. But basically, the long and short of it is, if it's awesome content, the rankings will follow. The links will follow, the shares will follow, the rankings will follow. If your blog impresses humans, the search engines will be equally impressed, because basically the search engine algorithms are designed to mimic, to pick up on the signals of what people like about a piece of content. So if people like it, the search engines will like it too. So just keep that in mind throughout. If you get too tripped up on what exactly should I say, how should I say it, and it's just, as long as it's really good, genuinely useful information that your target market would be interested in, you'll do just fine. So here's a case study before going into the third bucket, which has to do with those links and shares. This is a case study of what I was able to do with a blog that was supported with weekly articles, keyworded exactly that way that I showed you with the editorial calendar planning and the keyword research, and also supported with strong social media and link building PR efforts, which we'll get into next. But this is what will happen. Nothing typically happens in the first few months. This was a brand new blog, and so it started at 0, obviously. First few months, that's pretty typical. The search engines are kind of wary of any brand new site. Then they may insert you in their index and start serving up rankings. And it may kind of, just go slowly for a while. But when it hits, it hits. When the snowball starts rolling, search engines really trust your site. The additional rankings are getting you additional links, and it just kind of has this exponential snowball effect that starts going. You see on the chart where that happened. It just keeps going and going. But this was over the course of 16 months, went from 0 to 7,000 visitors a month. So this stuff works, but you got to be patient. Don't get discouraged if you don't see results immediately. Stay the course, keep weekly blogging and going on, and it'll pick up eventually. So now the last of the 3 categories of an SEO strategy is off-page, which refers to basically everything that happens not on your website that contributes to your reputation in the eyes of the search engine. So, now that you've done all that keyword research and you've keyword optimized your pages and your articles, your site is now a perfect match for when someone types something into Google, but so are hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of other sites. How do they determine who lands on page 1, who lands on position 1 of page 1, and so on? That's where they really look at these other reputation factors that don't happen on your website. First and foremost, that refers to links. And another common misunderstanding here is people think that they have to place links on their own website that point to other sites, but that's not what this is referring to. The links that count towards your SEO are inbound links, links that are pointing to your website. So the link lives on someone else's website and it's pointing to your website. That's seen as kind of a vote of confidence from the search engines that your site is good. And this next slide shows this is actually an analogy that was used in a book about Google. It's a flight route map, and this is basically how the search engines look at the internet. And it's basically really easy to see, especially in the less densely populated areas down in South America. Those few little blurbs of green, it's so easy to see. I have no idea what those airports are, but it's clear they're popular. Those are popular airports because there are so many available routes to them. That is how the linking thing works at its most basic level. Now, that does make it sound like it's just about quantity, and it absolutely is not just about quantity. Quantity comes into play, but what's most important is relevancy and reputation of the site that's linking to you. So as far as reputation goes, one link from CNN.com to your site is worth 10,000 others, just because of the high reputation of CNN.com. The search engines look at that. It's like, if CNN will rank you, we'll link to you. Well, then of course we will rank you. On the flip side, super relevancy is just as important too. So if you're like I keep saying, wedding photographer located in New Jersey, and there is a New Jersey Wedding Photographers Association, and you're listed in their website, the super tight relevancy between the topics of those two websites is a good thing too. So it's absolutely not just about quantity. Buying links in quantity is just to achieve, the high number of links is not okay, because basically that usually comes from things called link farms, or nowadays they're often referred to as blog networks. But it's basically just people, often overseas, take hundreds, maybe thousands of web servers, and they create tens of thousands of their own websites. They link them all to each other, and then they sell links by by the tens or hundreds. And that is completely and totally against Google's rules, and they will, if they catch you, they will kick you out for that. So that is not actually, I'm going to skip a slide here. Not okay to buy links in bulk like that from link farms. It is okay to pay for a link in a reputable directory. Now, I know this gets a little confusing. Basically, if you go to a website and it says, we are offering to sell you 100 links for $100, it's saying right on there, we are selling you links. That is what's not okay with Google. If you're paying to sign up for the Yahoo Business Directory, and it's a reputable directory, it's something people might actually use to search for a business and has a purpose other than strictly selling links, that's okay. So I hope that makes sense. Feel free to write in a question if it doesn't. But not okay to buy links for the sake of buying links. Is okay to pay for something that comes along with a link, as long as it has some other real business purpose. But again, hop backwards for a moment to my other slide. It's really just about having awesome content, because if you do that, the links will just naturally happen. You don't have to focus on link building at all. If your content is amazing, then the links will follow. People will be like, wow, I found this really helpful article on this topic, and they're going to paste it into their discussion forum about that topic, and then you're going to have a reputable and relevant link that you didn't even work for. So that happens all the time. So write awesome content, the rest will follow. If you are just starting out with your efforts, though, it may be hard to get eyeballs on that content if you're not ranking yet. It's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. You got to get the rankings to get the eyeballs in order to get the people to link to your awesome content. So what also is okay is paying for eyeballs, paying for exposure to your awesome content. So, you certainly wouldn't want to do this with every blog article, as it will get very expensive very quickly. But, every once in a while, maybe quarterly or so, you write a really awesome article, in-depth, great guide to your topic. And you can pay to get more eyeballs on that so that the links follow. So that whole natural thing just happens a lot faster. You're not buying links. You're just paying for people to see your awesome content. The fact that they're statistically probable to link to it after that does not mean you're buying links. It's okay with Google if you're just paying to promote your content. And StumbleUpon is one way to do that very effectively, surprisingly effectively. A lot of people, if you ask them what StumbleUpon is, they've never even heard of it. But it does drive tons of website traffic. But the problem with StumbleUpon is if you stumble an article, which is basically just adding your article to StumbleUpon, it quickly gets lost in the mix. It's kind of like Twitter in that it's just so much stuff being posted all the time, it gets buried really quickly. So it's hard to get exposure. But they have a thing called paid discovery, where basically they just pin you to the top and you get to, get the massive exposure that you wouldn't get otherwise. And it works really well. I have a case study here from one time that I did it. I wrote a really great article. And when I started out, at the moment I wrote that article, I had 183 links from 37 different sites. I did one paid stumbles, what it's called, on a certain date, and I paid $50 for 500 visitors. About 30 days later from that date, I had 303 links from 56 different sites. So that's an increase of 120 links from 19 different sites in 1 month, which is pretty much unheard of, unless you're doing something that's against Google's rules. But this is not, because you're just paying to promote your content and get more exposure on it, and the links naturally happen. And that's always Google's differentiator between what kind of link building is okay and what's not okay, is whether it's natural. Did it happen naturally, or did you, pay for it? So pay for it as in, purchase a link. That's not the case here, and it works really fast. So like I said, maybe quarterly, write something a little extra awesome and pay to promote it, and your links will just naturally follow. So since the link building thing was so over-abused, even though Google's algorithms have gotten better and they've gotten stricter with their rules about link building, they're getting tired of it, and they're looking at other signals for reputation instead of links. And that's social media. That's basically a real, thumbs up from a human being that this is good content. And so Google's taking that into account in the rankings, along with links. But actually, 7 of the top 8 ranking factors last year were social signals. The links were in there as the number 3, but everything else was social signals. And when I say signals, I mean every time a piece of content received a thumbs up on Facebook, or even a comment or a share on Facebook, or a tweet on Twitter, or a pin on Pinterest, things of that nature, those are called social signals. And the more of those a piece of content has, the higher it will rank, because the search engines look at it and say, well, people like this, obviously we should rank it. And not surprisingly, the number of +1s on a piece of content was the number 1 ranking factor by far out of all ranking factors last year. Out of the 200+ factors they take into account, by far Google +1s were the most powerful. So interesting little tidbit right there. So I'm going to fly through the rest of this here so we can get to the questions. There's a third off-page factor that really only comes into play if you're trying to optimize your site regionally. And regionally, I mean, for a certain geographic region. That is called citations, which is basically just a fancy way of saying online phone book listings. And, such as superpages.com, yellowpages.com, whitepages.com, and so on and so forth. These are just a small sampling of the ones that are out there. And how this works is it's actually not anything to do with the link to your website on them. It's more to do with what is called a NAP citation. NAP stands for name, address, phone. Anywhere your business's name, address, and phone appear on the web is a citation. And the more of those that there are out there across the internet, the search engines see your name, address, and phone number listed absolutely everywhere, then it's like, well, obviously that's a reputable business located in that city and state. So that's how the citations help with ranking for terms for a certain region. You know, Morris County, New Jersey, wedding photographer. It will take into account how many listings that photographer has around the internet that refer to their address, which is in Morris County, New Jersey. To check your status of how many of these you have, you can go to, it used to be called getlisted.org. Now it has been bought out by Moz. So the tool is now located at this link right here, moz.com/local/search. You can run a report on your website, or sorry, not your website, on your address, and that will tell you, how many of the most impactful places for citations or online phone book listings that you have. So if you want to check that out there, if it's a goal of yours to rank regionally. But, I mean, if you're trying to go for nationwide traffic, it doesn't hurt to get more from your own region. So I recommend checking this out either way, even if you are trying to rank nationwide, but especially if you're trying to rank locally. So that's really it. The technical on-page and off-page, that comprises a strong SEO strategy. And once you have that put into place, you do want to constantly measure the results. It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff we just went over there. So, you really want to measure so that you can do more of what works and less of what doesn't work, and spend your time accordingly. Spend your time wisely accordingly. So, what should you measure? If you go into Google Analytics, which is, the free website tracking software that almost everybody has, there is so much in there. It's so overwhelming, and you can easily get lost in just browsing around a ton of reports and not even knowing what you're looking at. So the three main things that I recommend looking at, actually the first one is not in analytics. It used to be. Keyword data used to be in Google Analytics, but it is not there anymore. With the new encrypted search, the keyword data is not available there anymore, and people were kind of panicking over that, but it's still available in Google Webmaster Tools, which is just another free website tool that Google puts out where you can see information about your site, and your keywords that people use to land on your site are there. There's some controversy over how accurate that data is versus the keyword data that used to be available in Google Analytics, but it's keyword data. It's data straight from Google. It's useful. It's very useful. So the first thing to look at is your keywords, and I'll show you what you can do with that in a moment. But the second thing you want to look at, second and third are both in Google Analytics. The second is your landing pages, and I tell you right there how to navigate to that report in Analytics. That is indicative of what content on your site is most popular, what is drawing the most people to your site. If you look at your landing pages and you sort it by the number of visits, and you're looking at your top 10 most popular pages, you know what content on your site and on your blog is working really well and what's not. And then you can keep creating content like the pages that are working really well. You can also see in there two other metrics that are pretty important, which is bounce rate and average visit duration. So, you can get all the website traffic in the world. If none of them stay and convert to customers, who cares? You need to retain them there and have them, take the next step you want them to take. So bounce rate refers to basically people who click on your website and immediately click back off and leave. So the rate is a percentage of people who do that. So content with a high bounce rate is not satisfying the user's need. So even if it's coming up as a keyword match and people are clicking on it, if they're bouncing right off, there's something missing with that content, and you want to work on that. Conversely, if you have a low bounce rate, very few people bouncing off of it, you hit the nail on the head and you're doing good with that content. And similarly, the average visit duration just refers to how long the person stayed on the site. So, it's just an average in number of minutes that they stayed. So the longer, the better. Everybody's average visit duration is a little bit different for their site, but the longer, the better. Same thing. If you have a long time people are staying, you're doing it right. If it's very short, you're doing it wrong. And you can use that to adjust your content strategy accordingly. And third is referral traffic, and you can find that in Google Analytics under acquisition and then all referrals. And that's basically referring to other websites that are sending traffic to you. So not search traffic, not from Google, not from Bing or Yahoo, but traffic from other sites, from social media sites or other sites that you got links on. And it does still impact SEO because, of the social and the link thing. So it basically tells you where you get your most traffic from other than search engines. And that's really useful, especially with the social media stuff, because if you find that 75% of your traffic comes from LinkedIn and 25% from all the other social sites and other sources, and if you're spending your time equally amongst Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest and LinkedIn marketing, well, it kind of doesn't make sense to spend your time equally amongst all those social networks when your bread and butter is LinkedIn. So then you can spend 75% of your time on LinkedIn because you know that that's your winner, and you can pull back on the ones that don't work for you. So the keywords, back to number one for a minute. When you look at that keyword data, what are you going to do with that? Well, it gives you ideas, basically. You'll just find that you'll start having lots of ideas when you look at the terms that people used to land on your site. For example, one of mine was learn internet marketing. And my thought that I had as soon as I looked at that was, I should add that to my website. I don't have that particular phrase on my website anywhere. So, and it is the service that I offer is helping people learn internet marketing, so I should have that to my services section of my site. I should make a whole page based upon that phrase. Similarly, that would make a great blog article if some ideas that you may have when you look at it. Or, oh, well, there's a lot of people are saying this a lot of different ways and landing up, maybe I should write another blog article about that. And you'll just find your own custom ideas coming into your head as you look at your keyword data. And if you're getting just a few hits on a certain term, well, you already have a little bit of mojo on that term. You might as well run with that versus one that you don't have any traction on yet at all. So you can capitalize upon the terms that are starting to work for you. So that's how to use the keyword data that you're looking at. And last but not least, the latest trends in SEO for this year are actually continuations of late 2013 trends, which were authorship and local. I'll explain what those are, but they both, not surprisingly, have to do with Google+. Google will reward you handsomely for using its little red-headed stepchild of a social media network. And authorship and local are two of the ways how you can capitalize upon that. Authorship refers to, it's kind of a formal filing with Google between your Google+ profile and your blog or your whole website, basically saying that this person over here is the author of this content over here. And how that helps you is if you then build up your connections on Google+, it looks at you as a popular author. That's a reputation factor that your website didn't have before. So it's like, oh, well, this content is written by a popular author. We should rank this higher. And I have a case study here where I was ranking 0 out of 484 million results for this particular phrase at a particular point in time. I set up that was before I had my authorship set up. I set up my authorship, and all of a sudden I jumped to number 2 because I already had almost 1,000 people in my Google+ circles, almost 1,000 connections on Google+. And so it immediately saw me, the search engine immediately saw me as a reputable author, and my article jumped from 0 out of 484 million results to number 2 out of 484 million. So it really works well. It also often, not every single time, but it often gets your picture from your Google+ profile into the search results, which all sorts of eye tracking studies show that if there's a picture, eyeballs go right to it. So the picture in and of itself is not a ranking factor per se, but it certainly will make more people click on it versus the other results around you. So to set up your authorship, there's a link right there, plus.google.com/authorship, and it walks you right through how to set that up. And the last second trend of 2014 is going to continue to be local, which refers to the geographical searches. Searches for, plumbers in your town or something like that. That local, that green section right there refers to what in the industry is called the local pack. It's basically just a chunk of Google Maps results that comes up higher than the organic results. So those people in that local pack there with their Google Maps listings are ranking higher than the #1 organic SEO results, higher than the person that worked so hard to get #1. So it's pretty impactful. And really, all it has to do with is your Google Maps listing. And if anyone gets that movie reference, you probably had a little chuckle there. But the way you want to take care of this is to go to your Google Maps listing, or create it if you don't have one, claim it if you do have one and haven't claimed it yet. But basically just fill it out 100%. That's first and foremost. If you can add pictures, add pictures. You know, if it wants business hours, fill out business hours. There's actually a little meter. It will tell you whether you filled it out 100% or not. And then the second most impactful thing you can do with that is to get reviews on your Google Maps listing. And all that management happens right there at that link, plus.google.com/dashboard. The Google Maps listing are now called Google Plus local business pages. Basically, it's your Google Plus business page, but it's like your upgraded Google Maps listing. It's a little confusing. I just still refer to it as Google Maps listings because that's still really what they are. So go fill out your listing 100% and get people to put reviews for your business, positive reviews, of course. Ask your happy customers to write positive reviews for you on that Google Maps listing. Certainly don't fake it. Don't buy reviews. Their algorithms are amazingly adept at picking up on that and deleting them accordingly. But get genuine reviews written on your Google Maps listing about your business. I'm just going to hop back to authorship for a moment because I forgot to mention one thing that's different coming up this year about authorship versus last year. So authorship last year really was just looking at the quantity of your connections, quantity only. Google has now said that since so many people caught on to this and set up their authorship, they are now applying additional algorithms, or going to start to apply additional algorithms to all the different authors, kind of a ranking system amongst the authors themselves. And that's informally being referred to in the industry as author rank. So there's kind of a second level to focus on this year with authorship, which is not just getting it set up and amassing a quantity of connections, but making high-quality connections on Google+. And we don't know exactly what that means yet, but safe guesses are that we're connecting to popular people and connecting to people that are very related to your industry. So the big influencers in your industry basically would be what you want to seek out to improve your author rank. That's all we really know at this time, but it's certainly something to focus on this coming year. So to recap, technical, on-page, off-page are the three buckets. With the technical, you want to fix the issues. On-page, you want to carefully select your keywords, use them on very specific pages, and use them in an editorial calendar or blogging schedule in your ongoing content and produce ongoing content. Off-page, you want to build links, which can happen naturally if you get a good amount of eyeballs on your content through something like Stumble Upon Page Discovery. You want to increase your social media. You want to build a strong social media presence and following so that when you do share your blog articles on social media, they get those likes and retweets and +1s, of course, and they amass those social signals. And if you're trying to optimize regionally, the citations, the online phone book listings. You want to measure and improve on that strategy as you go along. Watch the metrics that matter that I called out and get ideas from your keyword data to keep feeding your ongoing content strategy. And stay on top of the latest trends. Check the news once in a while for what's going on with authorship and this year author rank and the local SEO stuff, which is continuing to evolve and become more popular. So before I launch into questions, I am going to give you that great offer, which is basically I have this SEO report card, which assesses over 40 different points of your website for their SEO effectiveness. And I came up with a custom scoring system based upon how important each thing is and how far off it is from where it needs to be. And you get a nice kind of color-coded red, orange, yellow, and green color-coded system to figure out where your website is most far off, where it needs the most help, and it covers all three buckets that I just talked about, plus the local if that applies. And it also just assigns an overall score so you can get a feel for how you're doing. Normally that's $125, but for webinar attendees only, it's $25. And you do have to go to this private link right here with that password in order to get to that, because it really is for you guys only. So with that, I'm going to ask Roxanne to unmute herself and let me know what people have been asking.
Okay, we have a really quick question. If you use WordPress and have a blog there, is that okay?
Yes, common confusion. If WordPress as a software powers your site on www.yoursite.com, that is fine. It's when your blog really is hosted on WordPress.com. If WordPress.com is in your domain name, if it's yoursite.wordpress.com, that's when the juice is going to WordPress.com. But if WordPress just powers your own website and your blog actually lives on your website.com, then that is good.
Okay. Next question is quick. Referring back to Google Local, you said tracks, and he needed some clarification.
No, that was just a movie reference. The huge tracts of land is a Monty Python movie reference. I was just referring to how much space on the front page of Google that they're giving to the local. So it's just they're giving more and more real estate on page 1 of Google to those maps listings, and I just used a silly movie reference to point that out.
Great, okay. Speaking of new sites, it seems that a website I redesigned recently dropped dramatically in rank. Is this because Google now considers the site new, and I'm going to have to work to rebuild that ranking?
So yeah, common thing that happens when a website is redesigned, rankings often suffer, and it could be from a couple of different things. One, if you truly changed your website address. So if I changed mine from PamAnnMarketing.com to PamAnnMarketingLLC.com, that is totally looked at as a new website. It's a new domain name. That would be judged from scratch, starting at 0. If that didn't happen, if you kept your same yourcompany.com name, but just maybe changed around your pages a lot, what could have happened is the web developer, web designer who made the new site might not have redirected all the old links to the new links. So basically, your old pages had a certain link that could, you could use to take someone to that page. And now that may be in a different spot on the new site. It may have a different link. And what you're supposed to do per SEO best practices is do what's called a 301 redirect, which is kind of a change of address filing with Google. It says this page used to live here, and now it lives here. Or even if you don't have that page anymore, to guide the search engines and the people with the redirect from that old page to the next closest thing on the new page. Unfortunately, a lot of web designers are not clued into that, and when they launch a new site, they don't do the redirects, and the rankings suffer accordingly because a lot of your links that people have linked to on your site over time just broke, and they don't work anymore. So Google takes them out, and there goes your links, there goes your rankings. If it's really soon after the launch of the redesign, you may be able to recover them. If you put the 301 redirects into place right away, Google may still have those links in the index, and you may be able to recover. Unfortunately, if it's been a long time, it might not be possible, but you can take a stab at it anyway by having them put the redirects in place.
Okay, next question. I understand the concept of key search words, and we're using WordPress. We also have Google Analytics, but I'm unsure where to put the keywords.
Okay, I missed just the first part of that question. Can you say that again?
Yeah. She understands the concept of key search words. They're using WordPress. They also have Google Analytics, but she's just not sure where she should be putting in the keywords.
Oh, okay. So as far as placing them into the content. So the one major impactful place, like I said, is the front of the title. So to use the photographer example again, if he has that one specific page that's just about wedding photography, there's a title. When it goes into WordPress or whatever powers his website, he goes and makes that page, there's a place for title. and the front of the title is the best place, is the most impactful place. So you want to say, let's say his term was, NJ wedding photographer, or wedding photography. So NJ wedding photography as the key phrase that you're going for should be in the front of the title. If you can make that the title alone, then great. If you have to add a few words, try to add them at the end. Other than that, you want to just pepper it in a couple of times throughout the copy. So as you're typing about your services or writing your article, you just want to insert it approximately 2 times per 100 words at the most. So that means a 2% density. So, not more than that, because then Google will look at it like you're trying too hard, you're stuffing, you're being unnatural. But if you can just pepper it in and naturally say that phrase 2 times every 100 words, that would be sufficient. And then if you can also put it in a subheading, like a subtitle. Both humans and search engines appreciate subtitles. It breaks up long content, makes it so that you can skim to a certain section, a certain point in the article. And if you throw that phrase in that subtitle, that's another good place. But really, most impactful, front of the title of the page and about 2 times every 100 words throughout the copy on that page. I hope that helps.
All right, we've got one more question. It goes back to local and place for business. He says that it seems that reviews have something to do with the order in which a site appears on the map list, and he wanted to know if you found the same thing to be true.
Absolutely, yes. I just kind of lightly skimmed over it when I said it's a good thing to get reviews on it, but that's why. Because the number of positive reviews that your maps listing has is absolutely one of the ranking factors that determines its place in that local pack. In that pack of maps listings comes up even higher than the #1 organic result. There's a whole ranking system in and of itself within that pack, and the number of positive reviews on the listing is definitely one of the most impactful factors in that ranking algorithm.
All right. That is our last question.
Oh,
yes,
that is perfect timing. We are exactly at 1 hour. Wow. Excellent. So, like I said, if you want to take advantage of this super amazing deal on my report card, it really is for you guys only. So take note of that link right there and that password. Or I will email this out. I'll email out the recording and the slides and the link and everything to everyone in a little while. But if you want to write it down now, last chance. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining me today. I really hope this was helpful for you. If you have any additional questions, you know where to find me, PamAndMarketing.com, Pam and Marketing on Twitter, So thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.